Hello and welcome to The Life You're Made For. I'm your host, Dr. Heather Pinney. Often our world feels reactive, confusing, and chaotic. On this show, we're going to slow down together. Take a breath, listen, and learn. We'll be joined in conversations with influential thinkers who will help us make new connections, understand our unique potential, check the beliefs we hold, and learn how to overcome unexpected challenges. I know that each and every one of us holds our own inner clarity, confidence, and courage, what I call 3C living and leading. So let's go after it together. I'm cheering you on. To dive deeper into the tools we discussed today, join the Grace Space Collective by subscribing to my emails. Go ahead and head on over to heatherpinney.com right now to get a free preview of my book, Grace Space, delivered to your inbox. Now let's get started. Hello, Dr. Nathan Herzog. Good to see you.
Good to see you too, Heather.
We have a professional relationship with both of us being in academia and then me kind of veering off into consulting and you starting to do more consulting too. So fun to see you. I want to say, I think we've been friends for the decades now.
Yeah, a couple of decades. And please call me Nate and Dr. Penny. You know, I know we can be pretty formal with each other, but we've known each other for a long time. So just appreciate this opportunity to be with you and excited to share with your listeners.
Oh, and agreed. It's Nate and Heath for the conversation, and I'm the same way. We go way back, and listeners, I have promised you this past year that I'm only selecting people that I've gotten to watch for years. So Nathan is someone that we taught together with, and then we've developed a friendship over the years. My husband and him are great friends, and one of the threads that I've seen run throughout Nate's life is just this consistent faithfulness, integrity. And so that's why I wanted to bring you on my show today. I really wanted people to hear from someone that I respect and admire in leadership.
Wow, that's mutual. And Heather, I just appreciate how I've seen your leadership and your coaching just thrive and influencing and impacting individuals and corporations, and excited to see your journey and how you've just impacted. And I've read your books, and I'm just so blown away with the way you can articulate these leadership practices and give examples of how leaders can improve what they do.
Oh, thank you, Nate. I appreciate it. So just for a little context for our listeners, I want to read a little bit of your bio here because it is really impressive, and I want people to understand who you are and what you do. But Dr. Nathan Herzog, aka Nate, is an educational leader with over 27 years of experience in K-12 and higher education. We got to meet when we were both teaching at a university together. He recently accepted, and I'm super excited for him, my friend, the position of Dean of the School of Education at Biola University in LA. He's following his service as Dean of the School of Education at William Jessup. And he also holds a PhD in education, a graduate degree in executive administration and business, a master's in multicultural education, a bachelor's degree in biology. So this guy is the type, though, of academia that he doesn't do the academia to lord it over everybody. He does it because I see him as being so curious and loves reading, loves learning new ideas. And that's something that we have often shared together. But I'm not done yet. His work reflects a strong commitment to inclusive, innovative, and high-quality learning environments. He's also known as a very strong community leader. That's what I've loved, your volunteer work in our county, in our politics, and everything you've been able to be. It's just a beautiful voice in our area, and it's not my area of forte, so I'm always like, I'm behind Nate. He's going to help our schools. He's going to help our kids, whatever it is, because you live in my city or my county. And then last but not least, and this is where we've also connected on a personal level, outside of his professional work, Dr. Herzog enjoys competing in triathlons, running, hiking, and playing soccer. So, Nate, welcome to our show today.
Thank you. It's hard to hear all of that about yourself, and I'm sure your list of your resume is quite extensive as well.
Yeah, we have a lot of fun with the work that we do, and we take our work seriously, but we don't take ourselves too seriously, do we, Nate?
Yeah, no, that's important. Yeah.
So Nathan is someone that I asked to come on my show because I want to talk about the discomfort of growth. And let me give a little context before we jump into our conversation. In the work that I do, we all want to be higher level human beings, leaders, parents, friends, community leaders. We all want to be a high level. It's just, it takes work. And the secret conversations I have behind the scenes with so many of my high achieving, phenomenal leaders across the world has been, oh my gosh, I want to do this, but this really is uncomfortable. I don't like this. And my running platitude is like, I'm so sorry. Everybody wants breakthrough, but we never are told the path to breakthrough, which really is kind of a very unpleasant path. And so I think in the work that I've done in these amazing leaders is I've had the privilege to watch them level up. Everybody gets to see the end product. I'm the one as a coach and a friend that has walked next to them for months, sometimes years, in the process of how uncomfortable it was, having the difficult conversation, looking at yourself in the mirror, recognizing the feedback that you really don't want to hear, but you need to hear it, changing your behavior. These are all uncomfortable things that we have to encounter in order to be better humans. So I guess I just want to jump in there. What's it like? What do you think about, when I asked you, hey, Nate, could you come on my show and talk to me about this? What have you experienced around this idea of the discomfort around growth?
That's really great. What an important concept, Heather. I appreciate you bringing to light the importance of being uncomfortable. And I also appreciate your 3C focus with clarity, confidence, and courage. And I think you need all three of those things to move through an uncomfortable space. And so I've made a habit of my life to really putting myself in uncomfortable positions. I think leaders do that. I think leaders, they get comfortable with being uncomfortable. And if all we do is we seek comfort and the easy road, we're not going to grow, right? And actually transformation and change in the literature shows that you have to actually suffer loss to change. And so loss is uncomfortable. Now, I'll tell you, when you train for an Ironman competition, you are uncomfortable. And people will say, why do you do that? Well, it's hard to explain to someone that hasn't ever crossed the finish line and the reward of accomplishing something and seeing you change and grow through the training process. But it takes over a year of being uncomfortable on a daily basis. It's also very difficult to earn a PhD, as you know. You have to put in the daily effort of reading and understanding and gathering your thoughts and synthesizing that into meaningful statements. And that takes years of work. And you're very uncomfortable. It puts, the writing is challenging. In fact, I would say my bachelor's degree in an uncomfortable way prepared me for many jobs. And I would say my master's degree helped me understand really one thing very well. My thesis. I really got to know that. And I studied and understood. I felt like I really knew that well. And then you might also relate to this. My doctoral work helped me understand that I really don't know anything. And the reason for that is every piece of information is dependent on the context and the population and the geography that you're discussing. And so the adaptability, what you know is so isolated in a period of time and a location for a specific population, you really don't know much outside of that context. And so the generalizability of what you know can be often challenging. And so my point is, getting comfortable with being uncomfortable helps you achieve great things and move forward in life. When that's why I get up at 4:30 in the morning and work out with buddies. I put myself in a place where I'm uncomfortable so that other things aren't as challenging.
I love that. And, the way I work too is holistically, mind, body, heart, spirit. So all of these spaces that make us up as humans, the mind, the body, the heart, the spirit, are all looking for opportunities to level up. And so whether you're getting ready for an Ironman, which, that's not my choice, Nate. I really don't want to do an Ironman.
Yeah, you don't have to.
Thanks, friend. Or whether you're trying to tackle a PhD, and I remember that. Like, they even reduced us to, okay, your title is learner. Like that's all we were called for the duration of the coursework and my doctorate. I didn't get the title
Uh-huh.
of researcher until after I had finished all my coursework and I'd graduated and then entered my dissertation phase. And you're
Hmm.
right. It was years of an act of humility, because it was constantly like, you don't have the right to speak for yourself. You've got to constantly cite researchers, and you better cite it right, and you better cite it well. And by the way, everything that you're learning has been built on someone else, so you better give deference to that. Not until you have your dissertation do you have the right to actually start speaking for yourself. And by the way, we're going to train you in all the ways you have to do research ethically.
Hmm. Hmm.
So it was a real act of humility, wasn't it?
Yeah, we might have lost all our listeners now, but that's okay.
Well, here's what we'll bring them back. I
Okay.
remember I was in a stats class, and here I had
Yes.
really done. Yeah, okay, thank you. You know what I'm talking about. Statistical analysis, which is just not my area forte. I remember sitting there and I thought, I'm going to lose it. I'm going to lose it. This professor just keeps talking and talking, and I don't have a clue what they're saying. I literally had to
Yeah.
get up, go to the bathroom, have a good cry for 10 minutes to
Yeah.
come back. That was how much it was just totally terrifying me, because I was so uncomfortable with the subject area that I didn't know, but I knew I had to know in order to pass the course. But to stay in there. And I remember a colleague looking at me going, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "I will be. I will be." I am not right okay right now, but I will be. And I'm like, I just kind of hung in there. But that reminder too, that I'm choosing this. Not only am I choosing this, but for heaven's sakes, I'm
Yeah.
paying for this. This is,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. The other thing too, it reminds me of Darren and I were on a hike yesterday, and listeners, my husband and Nate are always pushing themselves in triathlons, hikes, you name
Hmm.
it, runs, working out situations together. And we were on a hike and we were doing a hill, and Darren says, "Hey, Ed, how do you like this hill?" And I said, "I don't like hills." And I was being really quiet, but I was just trying to get through this hill. And he wants to climb Mount Whitney. So he was talking about Mount
Okay.
Whitney, and he
Yeah.
goes, "Yeah, this would be like Mount Whitney would be like for miles and miles and hours and hours." And it's embarrassing how short of a stint this was. We're talking maybe 20 yards, Nate, but I was not enjoying
Yeah.
this hill. And it turned into the conversation of saying, why are you choosing that? What makes you choose something like that? Because my discomfort I choose in other areas. So I guess I want to
Hmm.
go there. This is really about a choice. You get to choose your discomforts. I really don't want to climb Mount Whitney or Mount Everest or these big, huge hills that Darren wants to do, and these things that he wants to push himself in, or you in the Ironman. But there is these choices of, where do you want to choose your discomfort?
Yeah, choice is really important. I mean, you choose your goal, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so while one person has an Ironman or hike
Mm-hmm.
at a distance, or maybe your goal is to build a relationship with your employees.
Mm-hmm.
And so you set that goal and you work daily at it, but you get uncomfortable doing that. And that's how you achieve that goal. And
Mm-hmm.
so the little steps of uncomfortability is important to make progress along the way.
Mm-hmm.
And so identifying that goal, I think that's where your clarity comes into play, right?
Mm-hmm.
This idea of being clear. And Brene Brown says that
Mm-hmm.
clear is kind
Mm,
and unclear is unkind.
mm,
And when we have clarity on our goals,
mhm,
then we can begin to make progress towards them. And that's not going to be a comfortable thing.
mm,
And and so I come from a place where my first acknowledgement is that I'm not God.
mm,
And so because I know, and this is gonna, I hope we can dive
mhm.
into this more and talk
Yep.
about grace space, but because I know I'm not God, I don't have the answers. And
Mhm,
so I need to reach outside of myself, and it's in community where I
mhm,
find the answers.
mm,
And so that acknowledgement that you're not God then gets you out of really the narcissistic behavior
mm,
that leaders can fall into, that they have
mm,
all the answers. And then those silos start to build, and you model that behavior, and it bleeds out into your employees and beyond, and
mhm.
your family and your relationships.
Oh, well said. I love that you brought that up, because this idea that we have a power beyond ourselves, thank God.
Yeah.
Because I would not be equipped to run this world or run even my little world, right?
Yeah.
And I recently said this to a president who was just really nervous about a very hard decision she had to make. And we were talking through it. And I just finally said, hey, I just want to remind you that you're not God. And it was just a simple switch because that pressure she was putting on herself to have a certain outcome that really was out of her control and out of her hands helped her release it and say, no, this is just a hard decision I have to make in leadership. And if I keep fighting this, what I'm really trying to do is try and play a role that's not mine to play.
Yeah, that's a great example. And we need to remind ourselves of that daily, that we are not God. And I think that puts us in a place to be able to make clear goals and reach outside of ourselves for those answers.
Yeah. Do you have an example of time that you've reached outside of yourself and realized, you know what, I need something beyond me? Could be with friends. It could be divine intervention. Do you have an example of that?
Yeah. I mean, certainly. I mean, I have mentors in my life, and really a lot of my growth has happened with mentors around me. So, for example, all of the deans in the state of California get together monthly and we mentor each other. And so that's a really important point where we can dialogue and have conversation around the challenges that we're facing and make sure we're not alone or how we approach these. And so that's one example of making sure that, you have people around you to mentor you. And then I've had a lot of coaches in my life that have also helped me grow. And really, the best athletes in the world. I mean, the best athletes have many coaches, right? I mean, Steph Curry, we were talking about Steph Curry, the greatest shooter of all time. In my opinion, I think most would agree. He's got so many coaches, but when you talk to a fourth grader in math and they say, I'm not good at math, so I'm not going to do it anymore. Well, that's really challenging, right? And then that person goes through fifth grade and sixth grade and seventh grade and eighth grade, and they've given up on math, and they get to college, and you hear the stories about why people struggle in math. And my approach is, well, you need to reach outside of yourself and get more help. You need to do it more often. And so for some reason, we buy into the lie that if we're not good at something, then we shouldn't do it anymore.
Yes. Oh, I love
But
that
the
you brought that
learning
up.
process and the growth process requires that we reach outside of ourselves for help. When I interview graduate students and they come to me and they perhaps don't have the highest GPA and don't meet the qualifications for a program, I'll often ask them, what's your plan? What's your plan? If we let you in the program with a lower GPA than what's allowed, what's your plan? And sometimes they'll share excuses about why they didn't perform well, why they weren't able to accomplish a higher GPA. But what I want to know, what I ask them in my questioning is, what are you going to do now that's different? How are you going to move forward and make progress differently because what you did in the past did not work? And so are you going to lean into the resources and the coaches that are around you to help equip you? Or are you going to continue to try to solve it from within yourself? Because I think that's where the true value is in education. We buy into the lies. We buy into the idea that if we don't have it inside of us, then it doesn't exist. But true growth happens when you give up on that and you reach outside of yourself and you die to the idea that you have all the answers and you begin to learn to grow by seeking help and support.
I love that.
Like I said, the best athlete, the best speakers have speech writers.
Yes.
And they get help and they continue to do that to be the best. And so we need to do the same thing in our lives when we want to grow.
Oh, I love that you brought that up because two words are coming to mind. It requires humility and it requires vulnerability.
Yeah.
And one of the things, again, I work with such high achievers. One of the false beliefs that I see some of these leaders have, and it usually takes them coming to the end of themselves in a pretty often dramatic way because they're very strong, is this false belief of, I have to figure it out on my own. And if I can't figure it out on my own,
Yeah.
I don't deserve to be leading. I have failed as a leader. And one of the biggest things is, and I do use the analogy of, if you want to be a good pitcher, you get a good pitching coach. You know, you reach
Yes.
outside yourself, and it's the ones that move up to that next level. And I call it leveling up and leveling up. The people that are leveling up are reaching out and saying, I've come to the end of my experience, my expertise. And if I continue to only depend on myself, I will just continue to be like a dog chasing their tail.
That's so good. And that relates to really I think your connection versus protection theme in the book. And, Lev Vygotsky, one of the, most famous educational theorists, says, through others, we become ourselves.
Mm,
And so your identity is actually clarified through others.
mm,
And because we have limitations in our own vision, in our own understanding, right? Our eyesight and our ears, the way we listen, is limited to truly understand. All of our senses can't truly help identify all of who we are, and it's actually through others. And I know you like Parker Palmer,
I do.
but Parker Palmer also says we teach who we are.
Mm, mhm.
And so it's really in our identity that even through the teaching process that we begin to identify. And so I think that connection or relationship is so critical to reaching outside and getting help from others. And it's very vulnerable and it's very uncomfortable to hear the truth sometimes about who you are as a leader, where you need to grow, and getting that feedback.
Okay, I love that you brought it up, and I'm going to go there, but I'm going to give you a second to think because I'll share first.
Okay.
What I want to do is I want to ask this question and let our audience feel our vulnerability here. But where's a time that you needed to have that connection, but you could feel the protection? So I'll start, Nate, and you be thinking, okay? I realized I had plateaued in my weight for probably 3 years. But my false belief was, I can do this on my own. I don't need someone to help me. I know what I'm doing. Again, and if I have to reach out, I have failed. I should be able to do this on my own. And I have several, unfortunate examples of this because I'm a very strong-minded person and I don't like the idea that I can't do it on my own.
Yeah.
After probably 3 years of plateauing and not giving it, I hired an amazing trainer, and I've been working with her since April last year. So it's been about almost a year. And she has pushed me to leveling up. And we're now at the point where she's like, we're going to track your calories. I go, I don't want to track my macros. I don't want to track those. Like, why do I have to do this? Yeah. So we're having a little head butting a little bit here and there. I'm like, no, I don't think I should have to do that. Then all of a sudden it hit me, she's an expert in this. She's giving me her expert advice. This is my time to level up. I need to step into this with humility and vulnerability and track my macros. Worse, she has access to my macros. So I'll come into my training session. She'll go, okay, let's talk about what we ate Monday. I don't want to talk about what we ate Monday. I want to eat whatever I want to eat. And I don't want you telling me what I can and can't eat.
Yeah.
So that's where I'm choosing this, like, and I'm a huge independent person and I'm all about self-agency. And of course, she's fairly respectful. So I'm not saying to submit to anything that is disrespects your agency and freedom and free will as a person, but choosing an expert to say, I choose to learn from you in an area that I've come to the end of myself.
Yeah.
And if you're telling me this is the best way to get results, I need to trust you and I need to trust the process and I need to really participate. There's that connection. And I'm letting go of the protection of, it's none of your business. I get to live the way I want to live. I'm letting go of that protection, say, no, I've chosen to connect with this person. I've chosen to connect with this level of expertise. I've chosen to try a new way to do things. And here we are. I've gotten results, Nate.
That's great. And congratulations. I'm very familiar with that macro process. And
Yeah.
you try to be very disciplined when you have goals. Certainly, some athletic goals like Ironman competitions, you have to be very disciplined with that. So I'm very familiar. Great example.
Thanks.
I'll just start with, try not to give you my entire history, but I come from a very large family. There's 11 kids in my family. So I'm third, and so I have a lot of younger siblings, but growing up, I had an older brother and an older sister. And since middle school, I've had a job really almost full time. And I've paid for everything myself outside of, hygiene and maybe some food, but anything I wanted in addition since seventh grade. And then once I left high school, I've been 100% self-reliant on income and everything else after high school, including all my degrees and all my living expenses, but anything related to that. So in a large family, one of the characteristics that come out of that is independence. You figure, hey, the only way this is going to get done is if I do it. You cannot rely on other people.
Yeah.
And so, Heather, I have, a million examples of where this dependency, the idea of dependency, but a healthy dependency on other people, trusting people to do the work that's to my level of quality is something that I've really struggled with. And so over the years, this started with even receiving gifts. It's very uncomfortable for me. In college, I had a mentor demand that I meet with him in a loving way.
Yeah.
And so I said, I don't need that, but he would show up in my dorm room and say, come on, you're coming with me and we're going to spend some time. And he offered to buy my textbooks. And I said, no, I can't accept that. And it was a lot of money. I don't think he even knew how much money, a science major textbooks are, but he really helped me understand the value in receiving a gift. And so the independence in this idea that, if it has to get done right, you have to do it is a dangerous mindset for a leader. Because delegation, I use the 80-1 rule. And this is something I think will help a lot of leaders. 80% of all the work in an organization can be delegated. And so as a leader, it's really important that you know the work, all of the tasks that need to get done. And also when you delegate it, you can't do it. And so another part of the 80 is if someone can do it 80% as well as you could, then you should delegate it. And that's the room for growth. That's the room to develop leaders around you too, for you to coach them up and see where they can improve. And so I think one of the downfalls and I'll get to what the one is in a second, but I think the downfall of a lot of leaders is they feel like if it's going to get done right, I have to do it. And the control it actually diminishes trust with your team when you don't hand something off and let them even fail through it and encourage them. That reduces trust, which is Lencioni's, and I know you're a Lencioni fan.
Yes.
So the 80-1 rule is, every leader has their tasks they need to do, but the top leader needs to save the toughest 1% of the work. The most difficult 1%. You do not delegate that.
Wow.
And while you can delegate authority, you can never delegate responsibility. And so you are responsible for the outcome, even what you delegate. And you can delegate authority. All the elevators, every elevator, if you look, it has a little certificate in it. And it's all signed by the same person. But that person doesn't go to every elevator. They don't go in and go, oh, is this working? Do, do, do. No, they have delegated the authority to determine that elevator is working efficiently. But if that elevator doesn't work, that person is responsible for the outcome. And so it's really important, I think, for leaders to understand the 81 rule can help them lead effectively with delegation, but then every leader should hold the cards with the responsibility and ownership of that outcome. And so that's how you manage your people.
Not only that, but how you serve them. You know, I think when you mentioned trust and control, I mean, you just hit on the next two gray space practices: trust versus fear and control versus freedom. And so as we look at connection versus protection, freedom versus control, trust versus fear, you have to step into all of those things if you want to do that 81. You cannot delegate your authority if you don't trust. One of the hardest leaders for me to work with is the fear-based leader. And you know why? They are trying to control everything. They're terrified that it's going to drop on their watch. They're terrified that they don't even know how to delegate well. They're terrified their people don't have the competency.
Yes.
And so there's just this, to me, I look and I go, it's fear, but it's not serving your people. And sometimes we get that backwards. We think if we do it all, we're serving our people. And I said, no, you're robbing them of the opportunity to do what they do well and to help level up the company or the organization or the group.
Yeah, the best leaders develop other leaders. And you don't do that by doing everything.
Yes.
So that's so great that you're doing that and sending that message, Heather.
Oh, well, thanks, Nate. And I appreciate you just bringing up that 81 rule. I'm going to be thinking about that a little bit more.
Before we go to trust and fear, because there is something I want to talk about that too.
Yes.
I want to continue on the freedom versus control idea. Sure. This 81 rule, autonomy versus accountability. I think both are important in education and in leadership. There's this idea of autonomy and making sure employees know their responsibility and their area of work and the policy around that, the framework of their job description and where they have authority to make decisions. And then the accountability side, you know, how are we going to be held accountable? What is the data and metrics or the key performance indicators that we're going to look at to determine if we are successful as a group, as an individual, and then make changes as we need to. But you know, freedom, when people don't feel free, I mean, there are wars all over the world where, you know, people, all they want is freedom. So you better believe that's going to happen in your company. You know, if people don't feel free, I mean, think about the American Revolution. I mean, it's all built on this idea of we want our freedom. The French Revolution, the Haitian Revolution, and one of my favorites in the 13th century, William Wallace with the Scottish independence. I mean, people will literally die to get freedom. So if they feel trapped and limited, and they don't have the freedom in your company, that's going to cause conflict and a problem. And so, you know, there's also, Parker Palmer talks about the monsters. There's these monsters that exist within leaders, and certainly educators and teachers, which, you know, every leader is a teacher, right? Every leader is a teacher. And this monster is this idea of functional atheism, where when we step into a room, we believe we're the most important person. And so this functional atheism, what it does, it's control. So you have, and it's hard to avoid as a teacher, because you step into a room, you're like, I need to control this. Oh, this is wild. I mean, let's look a window into a classroom for a second. There's 30 third graders in there, and you're about to step in. You're going to control that environment, right?
Yes.
And so that control as a leader sometimes can, you know, sometimes leaders in a business take the same approach. I'm going to come in here and I'm going to, you know, people are going to have less freedom and I'm control what's going to happen. But instead, as a leader, we have to avoid that, and we can't believe we're the most important person in the room. How can we help everyone feel valued and accepted and
Mm,
loved in our presence in our company, so that we avoid the narcissism
hmm.
that goes along with functional atheism, where we believe we're the most important person as a leader?
Oh, I'm so glad you brought that up. And unfortunately, because we are dynamic and no day is ever the same day, our lives are
Yeah.
constantly growing and changing. If you're choosing that functional atheism, which is narcissistic and self-serving, if you're choosing that, you will get good at that.
Yes.
Versus if you choose humility and freedom, you will get good at that. That's the myth that people don't understand. This isn't just a binary switch of, oh, I just choose this and I just, I'm like, no, every day you're growing. That's why I like to juxtapose it, because I go, well, you could grow toward being a controlling leader in person and parent, whatever, friend, or you can grow toward being a person of freedom.
Yeah. That's so true. I mean, I feel like I could be such a great narcissistic, controlling leader. I
Yeah,
could, but
me too. Yeah,
we have to resist that, right?
yeah,
That's the tendency or urge because of my upbringing. But that, remember,
yeah,
that's our limitation of our
yeah,
senses. Would that be good? Because if no one's following you, you're not a leader,
yeah, yeah.
right? And so even if your job title is a leader, if no one's following you, then you're not a leader. And that's those narcissistic, functional
Mm-hmm,
atheist tendencies. You will lose people.
mm-hmm,
What you want to do as a leader is you want to figure out how to gain a population following you. And I love that you talk about servant leadership, which I'm very familiar with. And
mm-hmm,
I think the best way to lead is serving
mm-hmm,
people to help transform them
mm-hmm,
into uh, better virtuous
mm-hmm.
leaders. And so leaders train other leaders.
Yeah. Do you have an example of that? Someone that you really saw model this? It could be a
I
negative
do.
or a negative or a positive example, to be honest.
Yeah, I do. I have several. So really strong leaders in my life that have helped train me have let me fail.
Mm,
And so the most effective leaders in my life that I've observed really follow this vape tendency, where they have a vision, and they have a vision, and I didn't even know what their vision was at first.
mm,
But then what they did is they articulated that vision.
mm,
Strong leaders can actually communicate that vision in a way
mm,
where people understand or receive it.
mm-hmm,
And so everyone has a vision,
mm-hmm,
but only some articulate it.
mm,
So only some actually communicate that vision in a way people can understand it. And then P, even fewer persuade others to take the first step towards that vision.
mm,
And
mm,
so, in a company or a business or a school, every leader needs a vision, and they need to
mm-hmm,
articulate that vision. And then they need to persuade each one of the
mm-hmm,
employees to take their first step,
mm-hmm,
just their first effort towards that vision, whatever it is. And each role that serves that institution should take their first step. There should be evidence of that.
mm-hmm,
And then E is exhortation,
mm,
because we all know
mm-hmm,
that inevitably there's going to be challenges along the way,
mm-hmm,
and we're going to reach a roadblock or
mm-hmm,
a barrier where it's going to get hard.
mm,
And this is the uncomfortable piece you were talking about
mm-hmm,
before.
mm-hmm,
And so a leader has to then exhort and help the employees continue to make progress when they reach those roadblocks.
mm-hmm,
And while they've taken their first step, their first few steps, that's a different type of thing to exhort them through the roadblocks and barriers and to continue to make progress even after that first step.
mm.
Because, sometimes we have resistors on
Oh,
our team
mm-hmm,
that just don't want any change.
right.
And that's more persuasion
Mm-hmm,
than exhortation, where someone's bought into the vision, they've made steps, and now they've reached some. And
mm-hmm.
that's the example of that you provide in the book about that. The employee, I'm trying to remember, recommending the software change.
Oh, yeah.
because they've already made steps towards the
Mm-hmm.
vision, and now they've reached a roadblock, and they
Mm-hmm.
articulated to the COO that, hey, we could be more effective here.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the kind of work you want to see in your employees.
Yes. Yes.
And so the exhortation was
Mm-hmm.
really with the COO.
Mm-hmm.
That was,
Mm-hmm.
a roadblock for that employee to continue steps towards the vision.
Yeah. Oh, well said. Yeah, and I think again, my work, and you and I've lived long enough to watch how some leaders are finishing. And the
Oh
older
yeah,
I get, the
yeah,
more I am so impressed with that leader who had that steady character, the servant leadership. And over each decade of their leadership, they only got richer. And then
yeah,
I've also, unfortunately, had to witness leaders that it just continued to downward spiral. And I guess one of the questions I want to ask you, because it's what I'm asking, what do you think? I believe leadership starts from within and it's authentic. It comes from within.
mm-hmm.
What do you think the faithful leader of decades is doing on a regular basis to finish well and bring with them grace space and cultivate grace space and grow grace space? That's a question I'm asking almost any leader that I really, respect. And I'm like, what do you think they're doing, Nate? Because we want to finish well, don't we?
Yeah. And this is such an important question. I think it does anchor into trust,
Mm-hmm.
and so the trust piece of what effective leaders are doing is building trust. And
Mm-hmm.
so, I mean, Ralph Waldo Emerson says, "Trust men, and they will be true to you. Treat them greatly, and they will show you themselves great."
Love that.
And that the idea of trusting someone, and Ernest Hemingway, who's phenomenal, amazing author, is the best way to find out if you can trust somebody is to trust them.
Mm-hmm.
And so sometimes trust begins or begots trust. And the way you do that as leaders, you start with that. But trust in the workplace is really this reliance on team members. It's not like a friendship. It doesn't have to always be like this best friend.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what's important is, I think sometimes there's a misconception of what trust looks like and how it effectively works in the workplace, because not everyone's going to be best friends, and that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
But trust in the workplace is reliance between team members, right? Can you rely on your team members to do their job and to collaborate effectively when they need to, and for you to work on a project together? And can you depend on them when you need to? And so this goes both ways. Leaders need to trust their employees, and employees need to trust the leader. And so I always tell a story about this, and it's a story of a footbridge. Like, Heather, imagine there's this gorge, and there's a really shaky wood bridge. Are you getting nervous?
Yeah. Sweaty palms.
Yeah, okay. And you look at the bridge, and you're like, oh, I don't know about that bridge. It's very shaky, and the boards are very old and weathered, and it looks like if you stepped on it, you're not sure if you wouldn't fall through. And so, how do you actually build trust in your team? You start to test the boards. I mean, you might test them slowly. You might walk on and hold on to the rope and maybe put a little weight on a board. And then you start to build trust. Okay, this bridge is going to hold me, right? And so I think leaders, what they do is they kind of take maybe the first step in that, and they evidence of stress testing the organization. And the stress tests of each board, actually, all the onlookers then build trust. Okay, maybe I'll wait till he gets across all the way, because this bridge is kind of shaky, especially when you're going to new territory. But maybe here's the hidden secret, and this can be really powerful. But imagine the bridge had a personality
Mm.
and saw, like, the bridge
Mm.
saw all these people that wanted to cross it. But the bridge was self-conscious and thought, I can't hold anyone.
Mm.
No one should ever step on me.
Mm.
Everyone will die. But then this one person starts to test your boards.
Mm.
And then you build confidence within yourself. It's like,
Mm.
whoa, I can hold someone.
Mm-hmm.
And then they make their way across. When a leader stress tests
Mm.
part, sometimes it's difficult and it's uncomfortable for the leader, but sometimes the lesson isn't for the leader.
Mm.
Sometimes you're doing those stressful activities to build trust in others,
Mm.
including the bridge itself, that didn't think it had any capacity or ability to hold anyone.
Wow. I cannot help but think of your own personal life right now. You
Yeah.
are, I'm like, I don't know if you're thinking it, but I'm thinking it. I happen to know what's going on, and you are stress testing a bridge. You're getting ready to cross, and
Yeah.
you have left a current position to accept a new position. This is why I wanted you on my show. I'm like, oh, if he's not understanding growth now, I mean, this is like a pivotal
Yeah.
moment. Like, how are you doing with that as you look at stress testing this bridge?
There are some things that have been just incredibly difficult in the transition, and then some things have just been beautifully rewarding. And
Mm-hmm.
so I'll say that leaders, there's this four-piece framework that I think is important for leaders. That one is to get right.
Mm-hmm.
You got to get yourself right, and that's the hygiene that you're talking about, the internal
Mm-hmm.
game of a leader. That the person, we all have these personal challenges and battles that we're facing. We have to get right, and that's daily. There's a daily effort, a
Mm-hmm.
hygiene that we have to do for ourselves to make sure that we're right, so
Mm-hmm.
we can live right.
Mm-hmm.
Because if we live right, that gets us to our third phase where we can lead right. We need to lead others. Because
Mm-hmm.
I want to go backwards. If we're not leading right, it might be because we're not living right, and it might be because we're not getting right.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so, getting right helps you live right, helps you lead right. And the fourth quadrant, which really effective leaders do, is they leave right.
Mm-hmm.
And that could be death, or it can
Mm-hmm.
be a position. But you have to leave. We all have to think about the succession, right? Or
Mm-hmm.
the succession of training leaders to make sure that someone can step up into a role when we're gone. Like, one of the most impactful things about an organization, Heather, is when you ask, hey, if you disappeared, like
Mm-hmm.
suddenly you vanished off the face of the earth and no one noticed, that's really sad.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's really sad. And so sometimes a sign of the health of an organization is the impact it has on its community. But leaving right isn't leading a sudden void that that doesn't also prepare leaders. And so I've been fortunate that at Jessup University, where I'm leaving, I have exceptional leaders on my team, all of
Mm-hmm.
which have stepped up and
Mm-hmm.
been able to fill the gap. And I think they're in a great place now, and they're going to do a great job. So there's peace of mind knowing that I'm leaving that role
Mm.
with just incredibly amazing individuals that have just great capacity to lead.
Trust
And so
versus
there's
fear.
comfort.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So there's comfort in
Mm-hmm.
that.
Yep.
Um, but there's all kinds of loss, leaving our community
Mm-hmm.
and not having the daily interactions with, including yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You and Darren, important part of my life, and I won't have the regular interaction. So
Mm-hmm.
that's there's loss there too.
Mm-hmm.
And so the transition of stress testing, and moving my family at this stage, um, which, next year we'll be empty nesters. And so all three of our kids are going to be in LA. And so
Yeah.
that there's comfort there too. But there's all kinds of, little challenges in transition. Yeah. Four major events for me this year. I turned 50.
Yay.
It's our 25th wedding anniversary.
Wow.
Um, and then my daughter graduates from high school, my youngest child, and then my oldest child is graduated from college.
Mm,
So those four events were already on the horizon.
yeah.
And so I thought, well, why not move my family and start a new job, add some stress into my life, and why not just throw that in there? But yeah, we're in a stressful season. We're managing it okay as a family, and you and Darren are a big part of our support system in that.
Oh, well, we loved it. When we heard that you were doing this, I think we immediately picked up the phone and said, "Hey, come to dinner. We want to check in."
Yeah.
And I remember looking at Lisa, and
Yeah.
you're like our marriage. You make the decisions very closely together. So I knew you didn't make it without her. And
No.
it was really important for you to be united on it. But I wanted to check in with her. And I am going to quote her on this because I thought it was so beautiful. And it's really the topic of our conversation today. But she said, "I've been comfortable long enough. It's time for me to be challenged." And I thought, good heavens, Lisa, what a great response, because she's leaving all of her family where she's raised her
Yeah.
babies.
Yeah.
She's got, I don't want to say more loss than you, but as a woman, I have
Yeah.
this empathy of, you've created all of these rich relationships. Like, you're saying goodbye to a lot of heartstrings and a lot of
Yeah.
emotional stuff. And for you to say, it's time for me to be uncomfortable. I mean, I thought, well, I think you might be my new hero now. That was just such a beautiful and true to your wife's form. She's very she doesn't need to use a lot of words, but it was a phrase and a
Yeah.
comment that stuck with me. And I thought, well, you guys are well matched. Nate knows the essence of discomfort, but I also know how much you love your wife. And if she said, "I can't, it's too hard, it's too uncomfortable," you would have turned it down. And I knew then that there was something in her that I wanted to find out. How are you doing? And to hear her response that way, it just really, I had a lot of respect for her as she's facing the unknown. She's facing a lot of loss, but boy, she's doing it with so much courage. As we talk about clarity, confidence, courage. Courage is that act of taking that step across the boards and trusting the bridge.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, I've worked with leaders too. I was like, okay, you've got all the clarity you need. You've got all the confidence you need. We've worked through all your belief systems. That's affiliated with confidence. It is now time to take an action step. It is time for you to move forward. That requires courage. So I'm looking at Lisa and I think, I listened to her and I was like, oh, her and Nate got a lot of clarity behind the scenes. This is a good move. Even though it's uncomfortable, there's a lot of loss, but there's now the confidence. They're checking their beliefs. We're not doing this alone. We're doing this because we're being guided. This is our next step.
Yeah.
And then the courage piece to actually do it. I think you're going to be so richly rewarded in spite of the loss. I don't ever want to minimize that, but it's so hard to know what we're saying yes to because we don't know what the adventure is. But I'm watching her faith just come and rise up saying, yeah, I'm going to say yes to something and I'm going to trust that this is the best next step, even though I have no idea how to define it.
Wow, that's so good. I love my wife so much, and
Yeah.
she is the rock of our family. Um, all of what I've accomplished or we have together is largely because of her. And when you meet her, you know that immediately. You think, okay, yeah, she's definitely the better half, um, and so she is truly an angel and a blessing to everyone she comes in contact with. And I try to be more like her every day.
That's beautiful. It's been such a rich conversation. Thanks for just following all the twists and turns and taking all the deep dives and being vulnerable and sharing from your heart and also just sharing from your expertise. I actually learned quite a bit today. I'm looking forward to re-listening to this conversation because there's some things I want to noodle on as a coach and where I want to grow. But I guess as we start wrapping up, I want to say, where do you want to encourage our listeners today?
I think I think this idea of connection. I think You asked a number of times, I think, and I beat around the bush, maybe to save it for this moment, what effective leaders do. And I think it's connection. I think in my life, the greatest leaders have known things about me, my my life, and asked about those, remembered them, followed up with them, and gave me the space to be human, make errors, fail, and then be emotional at times, but then also know that I have capacity to be professional. But there's many times behind closed doors that I have been broken as a leader with trusted mentors in my life. And those trust filled brokenness moments with those people have helped me. And so just as a piece, I know you're a Brene Brown fan, and Brene Brown is just so insightful. And she has studied thousands of people as a social worker. And she's kind of separated people into two groups, like people that actually thrive with love and belonging, and then those who struggle for love and belonging. And she's found one difference between the groups, and this is so profound. And I hope people listening don't only think about internally about what I'm going to say, but how they lead others that feel this way. But the one difference between those who struggle for love and belonging and those that don't is that the people that actually thrive in love and belonging believe they're worthy of it. It's the worthiness. So you think about all the people that struggle for love and belonging in your organization. Maybe not you. Maybe that's not your story. But I can relate to that. But maybe some of the listeners have never struggled with love and belonging. You need to tell your people they are worthy of it. You need to send a daily message that they are worthy, that they belong here, they are loved. And that's a leader's responsibility. And that builds connection and bonding. And if you haven't read Cloud and Townsend, and their connection and bonding theory is so beautiful about how a baby bonds with their mother, and how core that is to relationships. And we can model a lot of that, but then how important boundaries are in another stage. And I know you've talked with other listeners on your that I've listened to about boundaries. But I want everyone to hear, I want to leave you with this idea that you are worthy of love and belonging. As a leader, and if you're an employee leading at a lower level, you need to know and help communicate that message to others.
Well said. I love that. And a experience is coming to mind. I recently did a weekend leadership retreat, and these are all leaders I've known for a while, and I care about them, and I do love them. And I remember at the end of the retreat, I was doing the wrap up, and we had, like as we do with these retreats, all these huge posters and Post-its of all the brainstorming and the visioning we'd done and the ideas we got. And we're all like amped up. And I remember one of them, I said, okay, as we say goodbye and as we move back into organization or back to our day to day, I said, there's one thing that's going to motivate all of this. And in a huge marker, I wrote the word love across this huge poster. And I know they were not expecting that. And I don't know if I necessarily do it at every leadership retreat, but I've known them long enough that I'm like, I can get away with a little bit more of this warm, fuzzy stuff. They're used to that. And they all nodded. They're like, yeah, you're right. This is the ultimate motivator. It's the strongest power and energy in the universe. Loving other people, loving what we do, loving ourselves, loving the process, loving growth, loving change. I mean, I could just keep going on and on about really this idea of showing up well in your life, how that is just fueled by love. So I think that's a good place to land, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, go hug your wife for me, because And let her know we talked about her. We bragged on her.
I will. Yeah.
And everyone out there, just thanks for joining us today. And Nathan and I are both cheering you guys on. Did today's episode resonate with you? Rate and review the show on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. And don't forget to subscribe to receiving emails at heatherpenny.com so you never miss a moment of growth. Cheering you on.